My guest today is Shawn Mulligan, architect and consultant extraordinaire, founder of Design Clarity. Shawn, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Aram. Really appreciate it.
So, what is Design Clarity and how do you help people achieve it? Interesting name for an architecture firm, but I'm aware that your architecture firm does other things too.
Yeah, I love it. So design clarity is, in some sense, what we try to do in all of our work is help people make the change that they feel that they need to make, right? To get people from point A to point B, to get them where they're going, and to help them identify the path from where they are to where they want to be. Sometimes that work is helping people in the people sense, right? Helping an individual make a change in their life or deal with a new role or a new responsibility. Sometimes it's helping a team or an organization really think about where we're trying to go, the type of organization and work that we want to do, the impact we want to make in the world, and what we're going to need to bring to the table and to the work and to the force and to the fight to get where we're going, right? And so Design Clarity is a consulting and design firm. And we do consulting that's mostly strategic planning, program building, and leadership coaching and leadership development. And I am also an architect with, 25 years of experience designing buildings. All of those projects are really just trying to understand from people, what are you doing and why are you doing it? What is really important to you? What really has to happen here? And why does that matter? And what are you going to need to achieve that result that you want to achieve?
Yeah. Well, that kind of gets to my next question, which is what is the overlap in the disciplines between architecture and consulting?
Yeah.
In a sense, like you're starting to talk about some of that, but I think just to somebody who's new to you and your work, that would seem a little bit out of left field to have two things going on that seem to be different sectors or different activities.
Right. I think a lot of people think about architects as people who design buildings, and they do, right? You design buildings, you draw the buildings, and you're effectively creating a set of drawings and specifications, which are sort of written descriptions of all the parts and pieces that need to go in the building and how they get assembled and what they do and what to be careful for. And you're telling someone, if you put all of these parts and pieces together in this way, we will achieve the vision, right, of the building. We will have the utilization, the use, the function, the rooms, and the facade will look the way we want it to, and we'll have the right solar angles. We'll be oriented in the right place. People can enter and exit. It will be easy for them to know where to go, right? And all of the things that you need to do what you're going to do inside the building will be there. As I worked through my career, 25 years of being an architect, I came to understand that I cared more about the mission of the people inside the building and what they were doing than I cared about the wrapper of the space that we were making for them to do it.
Isn't that just good architectural design? I mean, that's kind of in my mind, the way I think about architecture is you have a site, like a spot on planet Earth, presumably most of our architecture is happening there. And then you have human activities that happen on that site. And so you start from those two ends and you work your way to the middle. And if you do it properly, then all the things that you're saying should come
Yes.
true actually come true. So is this a different take or is this just good architecture?
I mean, I think it's good architecture, right? It's in the sense that it is participatory design, right? It is really working with and getting into both the stakeholders and the users of the building, the people at all levels who are going to interact with whatever's happening there, right? I often say architects are making places for people to do things that are important to them, right? If it's a home, it's how do you want to live your life and how do you want that life to accommodate other people, right? It could just be you in the cabin. It could be your family. It could be all of your friends. You could really be designing for Super Bowl Sunday or the holidays or whatever, right? Or your various activities. You need a gym or you need a pool or you need, a home office. You need
Whatever
a
the
place.
activities are, then you're creating a space that is designed to meet those activities.
And there's certain places where you want things to happen. Breakfast makes sense on the sunrise, right? And so, like, as you greet the day, the
Right.
sun comes up. And so, orienting a breakfast room, for instance, to the east
It makes perfect sense.
makes perfect sense, right? And bedrooms are kind of more of a sunsetting activity, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes these things start to kind of fall along natural lines. So you're right. There's
Can.
the site, there's the greater kind of bigger context in the world that the building sits in, and then there's you and the people that you know and love or care about or work with or serve, and what do they need and how are they going to interact with the space? Where architects often fail, or where the challenges for the profession, I think, is that they love designing buildings so much and they're so steeped in the world and the language of buildings that I often call it playing in the sandbox. They love to play in the sandbox of design. And so the thing that they think is best for the site often overwhelms their ability to hear from their clients what is actually needed. And when those things come in contact or in conflict with one another, that's when, in my opinion, you stop serving the needs of the client. You start kind of serving your own needs, right? When you're thinking about, this is going to look great in my portfolio, this is going to be a great image, this is a captivating thing, as opposed to saying, whatever we do that serves this client is the best thing for us.
Well, and
It's,
and that's like that. It's okay. So now this is, I think, the opening to start talking about consulting because,
yeah,
and it really would apply then to anything that we design, any part of our life that we try to create, shape, adjust in order to better serve the needs of the actual humans who are participating in it. And we could go beyond humans to some extent, but let's just stick with humans.
yeah,
So there's humans that are participating, their needs and intentions should shape the spaces that they inhabit. And that can be physical spaces, it can also be organizational spaces. So now I think I'm starting to see how
yeah,
this
yeah.
makes it to consulting.
So it's this sort of iterative design. So as a consultant, I use the same design process that I use to design a building. So there's similar, I know you talked to Brian, right, about human-centered design,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
that's a very similar approach. I think that's a formalized approach to the design thinking process, to a kind of a participatory design model where you're understanding that there's collective intelligence between individuals, that there's a kind of an
Yep.
organization.
Brian calls it collective metacognition, which I think is
Yes,
really
collective metacognition, right? So understanding that at all levels, people are experiencing, it's sort of that that old story of, was an elephant, right? Three blind men and an
right,
elephant,
right.
right?
Yeah.
We all experience a thing from different aspects and different angles. And so we have a different read on what it is because it has different meaning to us because we create meaning with the thing.
If it was objective, then the architect could do it all for us. And the business process guy could just come in and say, hey, here's the most efficient way to do it. I don't care what you think. But it's neither objective nor subjective, it's transjective. And so it has to be done through these sorts of collaborative processes.
Exactly. And so for me, designing a really good building requires that process, right? It requires
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
lot of interrogation, investigate. My fundamental starting point is you are the expert in your life, and I am good at turning ideas and needs into spaces and places, right? As
Mhm.
an architect.
Mhm.
As a consultant, I am good at recognizing dissonance and patterns. I'm very good at understanding where what you say you believe and do is discordant with what you're actually doing over here, right? With what your people are telling me this and you are telling me this. So help me understand the delta here. Are you really this company or are you this company? And in a lot of ways, if it's individual one-on-one kind of executive coaching or working with teams and leaders, usually my goal is to really just help people get aligned with their understanding of their highest and best use, right? And that could be an organization's kind of core principle, its values, its optimal case, right? Its optimal reason for being, making sure that the activities of the organization are really in alignment with that. Not just what we do and what we say we do, but the way we do it is aligned with our core values. But as an individual, dissonance is really psychologically taxing. It takes a huge amount of energy.
So this would be dissonance in this if like we say we're valuing one thing, but we're actually doing a different thing.
If I say I want to build a more sustainable world, but my workplace is deeply inhumanly toxic, right? It is
Yeah.
requiring people to work 80 or 90 hours a week and skip their vacations and all of these things, right? Because I'm so committed to the mission of meeting this moment and this need that I am willing to at all costs get us to that mission, then the people that signed up for sustainability say, well, what about me, right? My life is unsustainable, but our work is trying to make sustainable. So I'm always making it for other people. I'm never making it for me. And that dissonance starts to create resentment. And that resentment becomes all of the various forms of frustration and disconnection and failure, right? In people and in organizations.
Yeah, there's something I'm seeing emerging, Sean. I'm curious if this is something you've noticed as well. At the highest level, or most boringly, you could say that companies are learning to focus more on the human element. And so you could talk about it in kind of a mechanical way about the importance of having a talent pipeline or employee engagement or something like that. But what we're really saying is that humans work within human spaces and they have human needs as they do this. So if you're going to build something where people actually want and where people can experience work not as a drag, but as some kind of vocation or something that's good for them and everyone around them, then you have to start with the human realities.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing an opportunity kind of starting at the top because CEOs, especially CEOs of when they own the company, when they built the company, they want to work at a place that they want to work at. And so it's kind of moving beyond, well, like an instrumental view of humanity in the workplace to
Yeah.
a participatory view of humanity in the workplace. And that seems revolutionary. I don't know if we can get there with companies at all level, but with some companies, I think there's an opportunity to start being driven by the things that we actually want to be driven by, rather than just meeting a benchmark, or this is our profit goal, or I want our company to grow 20% year on year because the CFO said we should.
Right.
Are you seeing this
Yeah,
opportunity?
yeah. So I think that there's a difference between doing and being, right? And I think we have been very, very good at doing, at finding a market, finding an opportunity, creating a product, creating a service model, whatever, and doing it. And there are rewards, right? I'm good at my job. I'm good at making these things. I'm good at customer service. I'm good at client service. I'm good at sales. I'm making money. We're profitable. But usually what I see is about 12 years, 12 to
Oh,
15
interesting.
years is
Uh-huh.
the time where the juice isn't worth the squeeze anymore, right? If you don't love the thing that you're doing, you can do it for about 10 to 15 years. And then there's nothing there anymore, right? You've done all the things, you've built all the systems, you've gotten the rewards, and it's just more of the
Absolutely.
same. It's more money, right? You're on the hedonic treadmill. And like,
I totally see that. I totally see that. And I think part of that is like that's a normal human thing as well, because if you've had children, you know that there are a certain number of years where it doesn't really feel that great. I mean, some people more enjoy more aspects than others, but you're kind of just doing what needs to be done for a good solid decade or two,
yeah,
and you don't stop to ask, what about this is meaningful to me? I mean, hopefully you do ask yourself that and you are finding some meaning, but you sort of get through the initial starting a business or raising children by not asking yourself, how is this working for me? And
well,
then you hit a wall.
you're trying to make it work, right?
That's the right thing to do. You need to make it.
You have an idea, you want the thing to be in the world, you want to find people who want it, right? Because you hear a song and nobody else hears the song, right? Is the way
Right.
that I think
Right.
about it. And you're like, I hear this tune, but I'm pretty sure if I play this tune the right way, people are going to come, right? They're going to want what I'm doing because I see it in the world. I see the need. And then you build it and you make it. But if it isn't a thing that drives you,
Or if you accumulate this history of not attending to the why I am living in this space and how is it that I want to be living in this space. If you accumulate a history of not attending to that, then sometimes very suddenly people can hit the wall. Sometimes it takes
uh,
some amount of time.
so
Mhm.
so again, this idea of partnering with change lately in my nonprofit work, and then I guess in my work in my consultant work, I tend to be working lately with people in their midlife, people in mid career, and
Mhm.
it's we call it a crisis, a mid career crisis. James Hollis calls it the middle passage, right? This sort of midlife journey. Great book. Richard Rohr has a great book called Falling Upward, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Which all of these people, psychologists, theologians,
Mhm.
philosophers, coaches, right, are essentially saying that the recovery community has a great phrase that whatever got you here won't get you there. That we build these adaptive responses to the environment of the world that we live in t- to to basically create safety, security, and survival for ourselves, to escape velocity, to reach escape velocity away from threats and towards a kind of a greener pasture. But at midlife, and I think for businesses at like 12 to 15 years, the fuel that got you there, you actually start to consume yourself. But I
That's
think when you get to a certain point, you actually start burning yourself as fuel, and you have less fuel to give. And so the reward disappears. You start to disappear into the thing, and you realize my work is no longer the joyful thing, right? When you think about making the transition from maker to manager, you are transitioning from doing a thing that you studied, worked very hard to get good at, you love to do, you find great reward cycles in, and you're being rewarded for doing that thing. So you're enjoying your work, you're doing the work, and then somebody says, now I want you to be a manager in this company. And suddenly your success is helping other people do the thing that you love, right?
yeah, yeah.
Helping other people succeed and get better at that, helping other people. And so you have to change your focus, and that's really tough, man. And it creates friction unless you understand that role and enjoy it, right? So
You also have to find a different center and a different source,
yes,
and the context in which you're working, the way that task is presented to you or that you present it to yourself is really important, because if it is mechanical or extractive, or you are operating in that mode, then you're consuming yourself and the people around you have the experience of also being consumed. I'm using this kind of roughly and mystically, but like I think you know what it means. Like when you're 12 and you first get your oil and canvas and you can paint something,
Right.
like you're
I made
tapped into
this.
a source.
Yeah.
Can you get that same feeling? Because you need that feeling. The people around you need you to have that experience 15 years after you started your company.
Well,
And
well,
that's gonna take a journey to get there.
and if you are resentful, if you are dissonant with
Yes.
the role, if you are telling people, this is exciting, this is wonderful, we're going here, I can't wait, but everything about you says, I'm miserable, I hate it. Human beings are fantastic bullshit detectors, right? We are so
True.
good
It's true.
at seeing the subtle differences between what you say with your words and what you say with your face and your body, right?
Mhm,
We are in, and if we're in person, you're picking up chemical changes in them,
mhm.
picking up temperature changes, you're picking up pheromones, right? Like there's a like 1,000 points of information that are
We're really good at this. We have a long history and we built a lot of very expensive hardware to be able to detect bullshit.
that's right. That's right. And so if you are not aligned, if you don't know what your center is, you can't lead anybody anywhere because everyone knows you don't know where you are
No.
because they know you're full of shit, right? And as that can be an organization and that can be a leader, a person. And what I try to do is help people understand, help people reconnect with, and maybe in some sense give themselves permission to want that thing and to love it. And just be honest about what you are and what you can do. And the joy of it, the gift to you is that you get to stop doing those things that are draining. And so what do you get out of that? You get a huge amount of energy because you're no longer working against yourself. You're always working in tandem with the best and highest and most excited version of yourself. It's accessing that thing. I think you're bringing up painting as a child is a great example, or playing in a creek, or doing
Yeah.
your first science
Or,
experiment, or whatever it is that like
or
turns that light bulb
learning
on.
an instrument.
Yes,
You can play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star now. It's so amazing. You just do it for hours and hours.
yeah, yeah. You're like, watch this, or learning a word in another language, right? Being able to say
Yeah.
something to
Yeah.
someone that wasn't born in your country, whatever the thing is that like turns the skeleton key, that turns and opens that new door to like the best you, the frontier that you want to go towards. That thing, it changes, right? It changes throughout life. What that resonant frequency is, what that interest, what that excitement is, and giving ourselves permission to change with it is, I think, one of the hardest parts about making the kind of change that we need to make. So I want to go back to something that you asked about like whether I'm seeing organizations focusing on humans more. And this is something that I've been thinking about, and I wonder what your thoughts are. I think we have a story in America, John Henry and the steam engine, right, which is sort of the story of humans versus the Industrial Revolution.
Mm.
And I've been thinking about that story a lot lately because I saw a study that things that employers are looking for now are much more human soft skills, right? That soft skills are rising over hard skills in terms of job applicants, both in the algorithms that they're using to look through like the stuff that people submit, but then also in their interviews, they're looking for people that are good at connecting with humans. And I run this group, Leaders in Architecture and Business, which is a mid-career business management training program for architects that I built for AIA Virginia, the American Institute of Architects, the Virginia chapter. And it's really to kind of backfill the business management training of architects. We're very good at being creative problem solvers, creative, collaborative problem solvers in the built environment. But often architects are so interested in and so they love the art of design that they forget the practice of business, right? That like you have to design a great business while you're designing great buildings. And so I've been on this mission to help bolster that side of my industry. But one of the things
Great.
that has kind of bubbled up is for the first time in the thought space, right? In the kind of white collar job space, we are beginning to be in competition with something that we've made. And it is a non human intelligence that is gobbling up low level tasks and work. And if you're a person that thinks about partnering with change, you can partner with those change agents and do incredible things. Build things that you never could have built before, learn and understand and synthesize huge amounts of information, right? To come to an understanding or to reinforce or give data to back up, say, an intuition, a human intuition that you have. But being human is suddenly very valuable because work doesn't have to happen through humans. And so I'm wondering, I'm thinking that this trend towards understanding that we have to take care of and serve humans and build things that humans want is because everything we do is for or with people. And we suddenly understand that because we are standing in a room with something that isn't human. It's not
Yeah,
a person.
yeah, yeah. No, I think that's absolutely the case, and I think that part of this push back into the human space, which I see in a lot of different areas, right? Like the trend toward in-person experiences, trends toward humanizing workplaces, a lot of other there are a lot of ways that even like a resurgence of religion, right? There's
Yes.
a lot of trend toward experiencing things as a human. I think that's being driven by a lot of things, modernity petering out, rebound from COVID, but the rise of the machine, specifically AI, the AI machine, I think is part of it. And I don't think I don't think that's a conscious thing, but I think the sense that we are in the presence of a machine that is taking up our human space now is causing people to push back and to want to rehumanize their spaces. And that impulse is really valuable. It's not clear yet whether we will succeed at it because we've deliberately lost or destroyed most of the tools that one uses to do that. But
Yeah.
it's definitely out there. It's definitely happening.
My hope is that like the hardware's there, right? That like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
we are built for and with and through human connection. We are literally
Community,
we are made
meaning.
when two people come together, right? We are created
Yep.
and built the combination of two people's materials, and then we are raised by this like village of human beings who impart knowledge and information and care and ways of being and ways of not being. And that's friend groups and that's family groups and that's religious groups and that's school and that's teachers and that's parents and that's family. It's all of it, right? We are made and we gather and assemble identity, right, through our interactions with all those things. And I think it's both the AI, right? The presence of these emerging technologies that are changing what we think about what our value is. Like when I talk with companies, especially architects or anybody who has a very labor intensive job, which stands to probably get less labor intensive, the conversation that I'm having with people right now is like, you need to be very clear about the value that you actually offer to your customers, which means you have to actually ask them, what did I do for you? Explain it to me, right? And not you designed a building for me, but how did I help you get from I don't know what I'm doing to I am very clear and certain, right? I have clarity and certainty about where I'm going. And then I achieved it and I supported you through the process, right? And so this idea of like thinking of all business as customer service, we are helping people do something that they want to do that they can't do themselves. And so that to me is that it's not just that we have these competitive intelligences, these artificial intelligences that are now, doing things that we can't do at speeds that we can't do them. And you can see the acceleration and intuit where we're headed. It's that every aspect of our life is being influenced by, in some ways, overwhelmed by, and not for the positive, by technology that we've created. We have been running a vast experiment on ourselves, on society, on
And on the planet, our
on
built environment, the entire planet, vast experiment.
just going, because
Yeah.
there's that definition of science, whatever is possible is necessary, right? So we can build an atom bomb, let's build an atom bomb. We can build a rocket ship, let's build a rocket ship. We could build an artificial intelligence that can rewrite itself and improve itself. Let's do it. What could possibly go wrong? So I think we're in this point where we're seeing these things that we were
We're
told.
seeing some of the things that could possibly go wrong.
Yeah, and it's human cost. Again, this is the thing, like people close to us. And I think, I think about things through the lens of addiction a lot. Like I think we are in a dopamine depleted society. We have so many joyful, joyful, I say, reward systems that we've created
Yeah.
that are
Yeah.
so fast and so intoxicating, so much intelligence that I wish had been pointed towards other things has been
Mhm.
pointed into creating these addiction cycles. And
Right.
everyone is addicted now in deep ways that I don't think we quite understand what the world is when so many people are in an addictive state.
So let me kind of push that a little bit because I think what you're saying about the uses of artificial intelligence is true for a certain subset of people who already have a whole lot of human skills built and have a certain type of education that allows them to think critically about how to use an emerging entity. But that is not really the majority of people, and the majority of people are stuck. I don't even want to say in the middle, but stuck in not a good place where they are serving the machine and they feel that is their life experience is that of serving a machine, which is great, bigger than them, and it does not have their interest in mind. And I think that goes whether for blue collar and white collar workers.
Right.
So is there I don't know what part of this spectrum you can speak to, but is there anything that can be done with education, community building, reworking workplaces for the people who don't have, a say, an excellent liberal arts education, and therefore are in a place where they can use artificial intelligence to accelerate and make their work better and amplify their own influence, but instead they're kind of getting stuck, or they have the experience of getting stuck as cogs in the machine.
I'll give a couple examples that come to mind. The first is my brother Ryan is a consultant. He owns a company called Sidekick in Cincinnati. He helps nonprofits and community facing organizations, much like I do, do the things they need to do, solve the problems they need to solve. And he has a son who is on the spectrum and nonverbal and requires a tremendous amount of care and caregiving. And Ryan is, on top of owning this business, is also kind of the primary touch point and caregiver for their son when they don't have when he isn't at school or when he isn't at home with a caregiver. And so you can imagine like highly stressful, very intensive, lots of time sitting quietly in a room, with a 16-year-old boy trying to get him back to baseline, right? Because
Mhm,
the world is hard for kids on the
mhm,
spectrum. And so Ryan found himself with all of this time and nothing to do. He couldn't get up, he couldn't watch movies because it would upset Hobbs. He couldn't, it was very limited, but he could look on his phone. So he started writing poetry. And, it's whatever, it's poetry that a middle-aged man starts writing, right? It's not all that great. But he decided to start working with a ChatGPT and I think Claude to say, you are a college level writing coach, or you're an editor, right, in a high level magazine or a publishing house. Help me turn these poems into publishable poems. Help me become a better writer. Help me understand how to use poetry to be a better writer. And so he worked for, I don't know, like a year and a half in these times where he's sitting in the room with his son, getting him to calm down, writing poetry and being coached. And he is about he's shopping his second volume of poetry. The first one's being published now, and the second one is like getting out there, and people are really responding because this technology helped him unlock something. He's writing about the experience of being a dad to a kid who needs a tremendous amount of love and just how hard that is. And so it's both like cathartic for him and also beautiful and creative and artistic. He studied art and he was a painter and he was multidisciplinary. He was always trying to find these different ways to be. And this technology has helped him get better at something that he wanted to do. So like that's one way. It doesn't always have to be work and profitability. It could be like I use ChatGPT and I use Claude because Claude has a tremendous amount of psychological data, sociological and psychological data to help me understand how to resolve human conflicts. So I do think that there are aspects of work that we can talk about, right? This is a business podcast. So how am I going to use this thing for business if my life isn't data, information, technology? My guess is that these technologies are going to help us skill up.
Well, what makes the difference between Ryan's experience and the dystopian version, or someone who loses their job, or someone whose job gets even lower skill because of technology? And that actually is not a new problem. Work becoming lower skill work because of technology being available is basically the whole purpose of the Industrial Revolution.
Right.
The water level of what technology is taking over is rising, rising, rising to now where even fairly sophisticated writing research, there are a lot of things that are no longer unique adaptations of humans. So what makes the difference between Ryan's experience and the dystopian experience?
So I think that his experience was, how do I use this tool to do something that I need to do, but I can't go to a class. I can't access a human to do it, but this tool can give me the knowledge, the experience, the guidance to do this thing and do it better than I can on my own, right? I am going to partner with this thing to help me be better. And it's going to be a stand-in to having a human, right? We have finally created an intelligence, right? A large language model intelligence. You can call it intelligence, pattern recognition, whatever you want to call it. We've created a tool that can talk to us like us and that can observe us and can say things. I was talking with a friend yesterday who has been using rapid AI adoption in his work and in his life. And he had a very complicated business conversation to have with a 20-year business partner. And he effectively asked ChatGPT to coach him on how to have this conversation in the most productive way to help him identify the goals. And somewhere in that process, the algorithm, the software, the response that he got was effectively, these are all the things that you're doing. I'm recognizing this trend in what you're saying. And I just want you to know that it's okay to want this. You need to know that it's okay and accept that like wanting this change is good. It seems like you're struggling with the want. And as a person who wants to grow, it's okay. Like you have to embrace the joy. And so it's not I'm trying to turn away from something that isn't helping me. It's more I'm trying to turn to something that I'm excited about. And that focusing on that excitement actually helped him change the way that he thought about and talked about what was happening. And that's incredible, right? Like anybody can access that.
You don't find that creepy?
No, I don't.
So those are the conversations that I intentionally try to stay away from with
Yeah.
AI
Yeah.
because that feels too invasive, too human-like. And the idea that I'm used to Googling things to get
Sure.
information.
Sure.
And there are certain tasks that I'm happy to have someone to a machine to take and rewrite this paragraph so it's shorter or whatever. But
Right.
then there are some things that have to do with meaning making and human connection that I don't want the shortcut. I want to be forced to go out and find a flesh and blood body. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but I'm just curious. It sounds like your
I
experience is different.
I I guess, if I think about like people use technology to help them reach meditative cognitive states that you couldn't reach without, 20 years of disciplined practice living in a monastery. Is that a hack? Is that bad? I don't know. Do they need that change? If you can use a technology to help you, say, deal
What
with
kind of technology are you talking about for meditation?
there are like there
Brain yeah.
electrostimulus, yeah. They stimulate parts of the brain or analyze brain activity so that you can actually see what's happening under the hood when you're thinking about or talking about
Yeah,
something,
I've tried them.
you know. And so is that feedback like in the end you have to make the meaning. You have to decide to do the thing. You are the agent, right? You are the living thing. You are going to be deciding through Google, through ChatGPT, through Claude, right? None of these things are perfect, real, 100%. Nor are the things that I get from humans, right? When humans give me advice, they're often talking about themselves. My coach always said, listen to the things that you say to your children because you're usually talking to yourself. You're usually giving yourself some piece of advice that you need to hear. So pay attention to that. But I have to make the meaning and the connection. It's just saying, well, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? When I was in college, I got a job at the Office for Metropolitan Architecture, which is Rem Koolhaas's firm, right? So he won the Pritzker Prize that year, which is like the Nobel Prize for architecture, effectively, the top world prize for architecture. The year I was working there, not because I was working there, but because of his incredible career. I happened to be there at that time, but he hired really talented young architects and architecture students to just generate as many ideas as they could. And then he came in and curated from these things, he was inspired to connect. Well, this is interesting, and that's a cool idea, and that's something I hadn't thought about. Let's put these three things together and see where it goes. And then he would send his little agents out. They would do their thing, and he'd gather them back up. Right? You can see the kind of analogy. We have to make the decisions and make the change. Ultimately, humans are the ones that are making the change. But I would love as much information as I can get. I don't fear it. It doesn't fear when it becomes an authority as opposed to being one more data point. And that's a hard distinction, right? And I understand that some people are getting lost in the fantasy. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, there's so much more we can talk about technology, and I kind of suspect it's going to be on our minds a lot in the coming year. I think 2026, we're gonna start to see some of the conflicts come out between the trillions of dollars that want us to be using this and the humans who are already struggling with their interface with the technological world.
well, and we've oversaturated the world with things that are made to appear a certain way. And now the technology is reading those things and making an even more saccharine version. So it's like an artificial flavor of an artificial flavor. And at some point, like the artificial banana, like fifth generation, you're like, that's not banana, man. I don't want that anymore. I'm tired of it. I want a banana. And so I think if you want to be a leader in the modern world, right? If you want to change the future of your organization and attract people that want to make change, you have got to focus on the people, right? It is people, people, people. It's people doing things with and for people and understanding and creating as rapid a feedback cycle between the thing that you think they need, what you hear them saying, is this it? And then they come back and say, well, not quite like that, but more like this, right? It would be great if this is great, but it's not as good as I thought. It would actually be better if it. And so like, I think tech has done this really well and tries to kind of emphasize this iterative, rapid prototyping, the kind of idea of a minimum viable product. I think people can start to adapt those strategies for working and think about a way of making change happen and empowering people to make change happen that is iterative, collaborative, and rapid and gives us a chance to feel the dissonance or the delta between what we think is needed and what is actually needed.
If that is one of the basic human skills, then how do we preserve that or actually make it stronger in an age of rising technology? Because when technology happens, what you need is not, it enables you to do a given thing with less humanness and less wisdom. But what you actually need in order to incorporate it in your story is to have more humanness and more wisdom. So, how does that play out for an 18-year-old, a 22-year-old, a 26-year-old? And we can kind of see it at a minute level in a
Right.
slice of life in our 40s or whatever, but how does this play out in the early stages that are really formative?
Yeah, so I do think the people that are going to run into the buzzsaw of the gaps that are going to be the human, kind of test cases are people graduating school and trying to enter the workforce because we are gobbling up low level work. And, you can already see that unemployment rates among young college graduates are really, really low, right? The economy is definitely being impacted and downgraded. But I don't know about you, man. I also think that there's been a lot of hype and sales and promise. And then there's also the reality of what this technology can and cannot do. And so I do think that there's going to be, it's sort of like starting a train where the train cars kind of like, and eventually they all get rolling and then they can move. There's going to be that period of rapid early adopters, kind of resistant, total, Luddites that just completely shun it and they're going to stay in their direction. My industry had, architecture had a very similar transformation where in my lifetime, I learned to draw by hand. Then I learned to draw with AutoCAD, right? 2-dimensional.
Yeah.
Then I learned to do 3-dimensional things in
Yeah.
AutoCAD. And then we created building information modeling, right? Where now you've got objects that hold information about what they are and can change and are adaptable, right? And as you're drawing your plan, you're creating your elevations and your sections and all of these things. Now we're taking those things and putting them into other technologies that are giving us far more control and adaptability. And so like the technology of what you do as an architect and as a building designer is changing so fast. And some people got off at CAD. They were like, I can't. I'm losing my craft. Right? What about the beauty of the drawing? What about the thing that I love about this? And they did, and they became a kind of a boutique entity, right? In some sense. And for a while, super valuable. Sometimes you need that hand-drawn drawing. And those people were a special skill set. But eventually the world moved on and that's not what people wanted or needed. And so this is where we kind of keep getting back to the value, right? There is the operational work that you do. I guess maybe a simple way of saying it is it better to cut a tree down with a chainsaw than with a handsaw? It depends on what you're doing, right? Is the cutting a meditative act that's connecting you to nature, that's a sacrificial thing where you're connecting to the forest and you're honoring nature and playing your part in it? Or are you just trying to get that tree down? What is the tool you need right now? What is the goal of what you're doing? And is this the thing that you need to bring to the table with you or not?
And so the ability to have those conversations and make those kinds of decisions is the critical skill of the late 2020s.
Yes.
But for recent college graduates, I don't see them being given that. I think we've spent a long time remaking education to be preparing people to do low level work. And now that that low level work is going away, what we're realizing, what I hope we realize is no, we should go back. We should move education back to the process of forming human beings to make wise decisions in life and to understand what being human is and how that functions in the world. But that would be a radical change. Like we would basically be reversing the last 50 to 100 years of educational innovation in order to create the sorts of people who can function effectively the way that you're talking about
Yes. Yes.
functioning effectively facing AI.
There's a whole aspect of life and work that we do not talk about. We don't talk about love. We don't talk about fear. We don't talk about anger. We don't talk about hunger. We don't talk about ambition. We don't talk about emotion at work. We talk about being more efficient, right? Increasing our KPIs. We talk about outcomes like doing, but we don't talk about being.
Well, I think we're going to have to. I mean, this would be sort of the core premise of this podcast and the larger project is I think we have to start talking about being questions
Yes.
in business before it destroys us. And that might be sort of an existential thing for the person you're talking about who started a business 12 years ago. But it's also an existential thing for all of us who are working within the machine. And I think that's it. We stop being confused about when we have a being task and when we have a doing task. And we need to stop forgetting. We need to start remembering that there are being tasks out there and they need to be done in the business environment and in the human environment.
You have to tend to the garden of you. Like you have to build a life that's worth living. Otherwise, and I hear this a lot, right? You may or may not know this. Tomorrow is the 18th anniversary of my dad's death, and for 2 decades before that, he was mentally compromised by a car accident. He was hit by a kid that fell asleep at the wheel. Sent my family down a very different trajectory. There was one family, and then there was this event, and then there was a very
Yeah.
different life.
Yeah.
And my education and empathy and care and understanding that like you are 30 seconds on the
Right.
road
Right.
difference between joyful life of growth
One kind
and
of
progress,
family, different
tragedy and
sort of
disorder.
life. Yeah.
But what that did was it created a deficit in my life where I really needed older male role models. I needed advisors in the world to help me understand how to do some basic things like how do you get a mortgage or like what are credit cards and how do they work, right? But also what should I do next? What do I do with these skills? What do you like help me figure out how to use the things that I've got to be in the world. And not that my dad was completely absent, but he didn't have that gear anymore. And
Mm.
he had a lot of struggles and challenges that were more of a drag on my energy and my time in trying to help prevent harm at home and increase, joy, right? Which is funny when people ask me what my business is, I say I help high performing people and teams suffer less and thrive more, and in a lot of ways I've been doing this since I was 8. But the thing that I learned by reaching out to these older men and women who I think have led exemplary lives or have done really impressive things in the world, who have careers and lives and families that I admire, is that they are very intentional about building relationships, about building culture around them, about building rituals in their life, about always having a trip on their calendar to look forward to, that like they tend to all of their life, to their faith, to their money, to their family, to their friends, to their fitness, both mental fitness and physical fitness. And they're constantly checking in and evaluating to understand how am I doing? And am I being the best version of me that I can be? And they really taught me that it's not a nice to have, it's a must have. Being a human being is not easy, right? And being a leader is really hard. It is very isolating. There are a lot of dark nights of the soul.
It's the reality of being human that we somehow have these faculties for perceiving some very elevated realities, perceiving and responding to and participating in some very elevated realities. But with that consciousness comes the burden that we also have the ability to not participate in them and to experience the consequences of it. And that we can numb away those consequences, we can distract away, but sooner or later, there's this reality that we're kind of always on this ladder between heaven and hell. And you don't get to get off the ladder. You're either going upwards
You,
towards the
you,
best possible, this amazing existence that humans can have, or you're going down into darkness and cruelty and evil and suffering.
or it's right? Like you can have in one day incredible financial, business, personal success, and then some member of your family has a
Yeah.
terrible
Yeah.
thing happen, and you are both.
But that's
We
the
talk.
ride that we're on.
That's being human, right? We live in Charlottesville, and a lot of people in Charlottesville have this almost idyllic, godlike version of Thomas Jefferson. And I think Thomas Jefferson is one of the creepiest, most complicated figures in human history. To write that all men are created equal and live such a different life. It's right. It's he understood that there's this aspirational view of humanity and of a system that we should make. And he owned his children and rented them to make money. Like, how do you do that as a
How
person?
is it possible to do both at once
Yeah.
at such extreme levels?
So it seems so extreme from here. And what I know, my family is my mom's family. My mom's side of the family is, from Arkansas and Tennessee. And what I know is that people I love can say things that shake me to my bones, right? That that are so hard to handle from a kind of a moral and humanistic standpoint. And yet I love these people. And yet they are good and kind and loving people, but they also grew up in a milieu and in a place and of a time where being human was different and dehumanizing was the norm. And I think we do ourselves a disservice to think that those things are always in the past. That like that is happening now. And one day we will look at how we're acting now and we will be ashamed of something.
Yeah, that they're in the past, or that if we implement a set of rules, that then those dangers can go away.
Yeah.
And you have that from both religious people and anti-religious people. that think that it's just this simple matter of doing these few things, and then we won't have all this bad stuff. But that's not the
Yeah,
case.
or it
Wrong.
was a person. It was we talk about like the evil figure, the villain, and it's like, no,
Sure,
this
sure.
is an emerging, this is something that I think we're experiencing it right now. There are changes, and do we want authority or do we want democracy? Do we want the voice of the people or do we want the voice of the one, right? Like this is happening across the globe right now.
Mhm.
And you have to see it as a reaction. People are reacting to something. And usually anger, right behind it, right under it is fear. What are people afraid of? What do they feel that they've lost? What do they feel that they can't get back? What are they afraid of for themselves and their children and their children's children? And how are we not meeting that need, right? And this is the human thing that we need to be training people. So you brought up the university, and I think one thing that we need to understand, both large language models and the university have a tremendous flaw in that they are backward facing. They are always pointed towards the past, what we have done. And their job is to help us understand what happened. But we live in a world of rapid change and of crises and challenges that I don't know that our civilization, human civilization, has ever tried to rise to the level of what happens when the oceans rise so quick. Maybe, the ice ages was the last time that we had such a drastic environmental change coming. And so we need to be, our work and our action needs to actually be focusing, like, how do we face the thing that's coming? How do we face the coming storm? How do we face these challenges and get out ahead of it so that we don't get overtaken by the wave, but so we can ride the wave? And that is a very different operational model than looking back and understanding. Now you can look
I would
back.
see it as I would see it as a both and. Like in information systems, or like from a mathematical perspective, during a time of rapid change, the most valuable information is the most recent information and the oldest information. So you have to somehow figure out how to mine the distant past and the relevant.
Yeah.
There's a big proviso there for
Yeah.
what relevant means, but
Yeah.
get the relevant things that are the most durable, and then also the things which are most recent that allow you to be forward facing. And yes, that will require some a reworking of our education.
Yeah. Well, and then what do we ask people to do when they show up at work? So my industry, I've built 3 programs at the local, state level for mid-career professionals, really identifying mid-career as a phase in work life and building tools, programs, and support
Okay.
for
Okay.
mid-career people,
Mhm.
right? AIA Virginia. And part of that is identifying and saying, like, this is a real group of people. They have very specific kinds of experiences and we need to support them. But the other is helping my community understand that there are late stage folks and there are early stage folks, and the middle stands between them and is often kind of translating one to the other. And so you can't work past us. You have to work through us because we are the ones that are managing work.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, as a person that likes to bring people together and loves having difficult conversations, I keep helping this group of professionals at statewide organizational meetings, at conferences, have multi generational conversations about where we are and where we're going. And our last one, I saw a change in the late stage career folks. And these are the people that own companies, have been in charge of them for a long time, and are within usually 10 years of retiring. And I saw a switch flip in their mind, and they said, we need to figure out how to harness this energy, we need to learn from these young people and understand how to keep their skills inside our organization so they don't go outside and become our competitors. So how do we actually activate them to build the future that we need to grow and survive? And how do we use them to improve our stress, to reduce our suffering and our kind of like low level work, and so that we can focus on the thing that's most important, so we can build our value. The older folks in my profession, they understand the value, they understand connecting with clients, they understand sales, they understand how to sell somebody something that doesn't exist and get them to pay you to make it happen, right? Young folks haven't had that chance, but they understand how to use these tools to make work easier. So it's sort of the snake eating its tail. It's the Ouroboros.
I would love to have another conversation
Yeah.
specifically about multi-generational conversation
Oh yeah.
and
I love it.
how this ties in and what function these conversations play in renewal, because that's what the Ouroboros is meant to be. It's not death, it's the renewal. Yeah, that's a great cue up for a great another session. Any final words? Any parting shots you'd like the audience to hear about?
I'm just really grateful for the chance to talk about this
Really
side of
great.
work, and your instincts, Aram, to say, I think we stop talking about leadership and start talking about modern leadership. that this new world that we live in requires a new way of thinking about being a leader. And it is about humans. We need to stop being distracted by the shiny objects of the technology and understand how the technology is impacting and changing humans and what we do. And how do we see these things as advantages and opportunities and not things to be fearful for and to resist. And you're doing it right in these conversations. And I think all leaders need to be inspired by and motivated to make this kind of change in their organizations.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, and thanks for listening to the Coherent Business Podcast. I hope this conversation sparked something from you, and I'd ask you now just to take the time to comment, to rate the show, and to think of someone who might be wrestling with similar questions that you can share some of these conversations with. That's what we're here for, is to try together to advance the state of the art when it comes to running a coherent business. Until next time, keep thinking, keep listening, and keep weaving things together.